I guess could you elaborate on what made you not safe? And then like,
Yeah. Well, again, Gaza being sieged and under constant harassment from the state of Israel makes Gaza a pretty unsafe place. Not only that, but we also have a tyrant government or semi-government. They're not really a government, which makes it like a very, I think, de facto government of Gaza is kind of tyrannical, led by Hamas. Um, so that also doesn't make it a safe space for people that like to express their opinions about the government. So people like me are mainly not safe. I was stopped multiple times and by what are called ours like uh, neighborhood watch or something like that. They're more of like a governmental aspect of like watching neighborhoods, especially what people say. I had comments on things I said multiple times, and comments were like, "How about you never talk about that again in public?" Or "We'd really appreciate it if you don't mention us again when you speak to people," or stuff like that. So that doesn't really make it a safe place for me. So that's why I left. Now that doesn't stop me that I still want to go back home and spend some time. So like, although safety is an important aspect, but it wasn't a major aspect. Still, uh, the more advanced education when it comes to higher education was the biggest aspect that had me come back here.
thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have any difficulties, like logistically, like visa? Like you talked about checkpoints, but was there
Yeah.
anything getting to the United States?
Um, Not really. I think my dealings with the American consulate and just the American side of things has been very nice. It's been very smooth, luckily. It hasn't been easy because it's an exhausting process, like the whole application for a visa, making sure that I have enough funds for my visa to be approved, and stuff like that. So that was like the tricky part of it. But once I had everything that I needed in like the right forms and stuff like that, then everything was very smooth. Um, just I guess my only grievance with the United States, especially when traveling, is every time I'm at an airport, I get randomly selected for a check. Which right now I'm used to it, so it's not as bad of a deal anymore. Which some people might disagree with me and say, no, that's bad that you now take this as for granted. But I'm like, at least I know what I'm gonna go through. Like I'm used to it by now. So I think that's like the only thing when it comes to traveling to the U.S. that bothered me personally. My main struggles and problems were with the Israeli side. If I have to go to an airport in Jordan, I have to cross Israel to get to the West Bank, and from the West Bank, I have to cross Israel again to go to Jordan. And that trip is pleasant on the Palestinian side, on the Jordanian side, but it's not really pleasant on the Israeli side. Like the checkpoints, the total humiliation that we go through. For example, like they would check your bags not using machines, but they actually like open your bags and look through them. The two times I left Gaza, what they did was throw my everything I have in the bag in the ground and have me retidy my bag all over again myself, or walking a long distance that I can't remember right now how long it was, but it was a pretty long distance in like a caged pathway that's full of cameras. So that makes you feel subhuman on a certain level, and it just kind of like takes away your dignity. The way they treat you, the way they talk to you, the way that I had to stop at multiple checkpoints on my way and stuff like that. The long, excruciating wait, not pain. There was no pain. The long, excruciating painful wait, let's put it that way, that was there. We had to wait for multiple hours in certain checkpoints when crossing Israel. Um, but yeah, nothing with the American side in particular.
Cool.
Mhm.
Thank you. So now we're gonna move on to United States experience, that section.
Mhm.
So could you like walk me through your first day in the United States, or like your first week,
Mm.
and like how you were feeling adjusting here?
I landed in Dulles Airport in DC, or around DC, my first day in 2014. The first thing that struck me is how diverse the US is. That's like the first thing that hit me. I was standing in the airport, I was looking around. I didn't see a single white person in the whole airport, and I didn't see a single majority of a race in the airport either. Like, I was looking around and people were just from all over the world. So that was like the first thing that struck me about the US. I was like, okay, like that's very different from back home. We're very homogenous. As to that, but coming here, it was like the first 2 minutes. I was like, well, that's, I think, what I should expect. That the U.S. is very, very, very diverse. My first 4 days in the U.S. I've spent in D.C. Mostly tourism, like going around museums and stuff like that. And I lived with other international students in a student center in DC. So still, most of my I guess experience with Americans was still very limited at the time. But after the 4 days, I went to Columbus, Ohio. Had to go see my host family, or move with my host family. And that was very different. I went to Columbus, Ohio, and I landed in the airport. Expected to see the same thing in the airport as I did in Dallas, but everyone was white in that airport. So it was just a different experience. I'm like, oh, so not all of America is super diverse, I guess, is what I realized in my first week. Um, the I think the way how America is very, very systematic hit me also. You gotta stand in line. Much respect. We don't have the concept of lines back home. Like, my first meal with my host family was at a Wendy's, because they wanted to show me what Columbus, Ohio offered the world. So we went to a Wendy's, and people were standing in line. And I just walked past the line, and I was then going to order. And my host dad was like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Ordering." And he's like, "Come back here." Like, so that was like, I was like, "Did I do something wrong?" He's like, "You need to sit in line." And I'm like, "For what?" And he's like, "To order." And I'm like, "Why would you do that to yourself? It's survival for the fittest. Whoever gets it first, like, gets it first." That's how I used to do it. So that were the things that I was picking up on the first week. Then I got introduced to the paradox of the friendliness of Americans. So everyone smiles when you see someone in the street, which is a very, very creepy thing for me. Like, why are you smiling? You don't know me. And so I was walking with my host dad. He was showing me around the neighborhood, and everyone was smiling. And I'm like, "Well, do you know them?" And he's like, "No, they're our neighbors." So two things there. He didn't know his neighbors, which was not a good thing where I'm from. But everyone was smiling, which also not a good thing where I'm from. So that was like a big things to like grapple with. So I thought that Americans are friendly. They smile for each other. They look very hospitable and stuff like that. Then you walk past someone is like, "Hey, how's your day going?" And I actually stood and I was trying to explain how my day is going, while the person that asked kept on walking. And I'm like, what the hell is going on here? Like, if you're asking me how my day is going, I expect you to actually listen to what I'm going to say, like how my day is going. So that was paradoxical for me, that you guys, like Americans, smile to strangers, but at the same time won't have a conversation with them, although you're smiling at them. So that was very, very weird for me. One of my cultural shocks here. Um, Also, Americans are not touchy. You guys don't like to be touched. You love your personal space, which is also another weird concept for me. You actually only have 5 people in a car, which is weird. Like, we've always taken the 5 people in a car as a recommendation, not as a requirement. We have 17 sometimes, like with kids. You fill the car with kids if you're driving kids around. You use your seatbelts. These are like the things that I struggled with my first days living with an American family. Privacy room, like you can actually close the door to your room and not have anyone bother you, and your parents have to knock before walking into your room.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
So, next, I think, you might have already answered this, but what do you enjoy most, like, if anything, about the United States? And how did you figure it out?
Oh, that's a tough question. I don't think about it a lot, and I've also struggled with answering that question when I went back home after my 1 year, because my friends were like, "You came back from America. How was America?" And I'm like, "Okay." People are like, "You go to the States and you come back and you're like, it's okay. What do you mean?" So it's a really tough question to answer. My favorite thing about my experience in the U.S. Wow. I guess the freedom of it, the individuality, the focus on individuality here. Like I said before, like our culture is very, very communal. The community is the most important thing, but here we kind of get the opposite, how the individual is the most important and focus on individuality and stuff like that. I think that was the best thing, my experience, like getting exposed to that concept. So for example, back home, my room would be a mess. I'd leave the room to go to school. I'll come back, the room will be clean. My clothes will be washed, dried, and ironed, and stuff like that. Everything is ready. Dinner is ready on its own. Like, I do nothing. I was just a spoiled brat, and that's the same for every kid in Gaza. So when I came here, and I'm like, oh, okay, so my room is not gonna clean itself, or no one is gonna come and clean my room. So these are the things that I got, like, helped me a lot develop my personality and the person I am today. I still appreciate the communal feeling of back home, but I also appreciate being an individual. So I think I'm now like somewhere in the middle, but makes it very different from the person I was before, I believe. And I think that would be my favorite thing about the States, or my experience in the States.